Alrighty.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Kyle Corvus Crow, joined at the desk once again today by Coco the Dragon. We are your Collegiate Cavaliers here for a little bit more action as George Mason University and now University of Maryland, Baltimore County get ready to square off in tonight's matchup.
Yeah, and it's going to be a good one. It is going to be on the east side. Both of these teams had won at least once before, sitting on both 2-0s. So they dominated their first week of performances. So I'm going to be excited to see how well they're going to be able to sort of stat check each other this time around, because it's actually going to be really, really close for me just based off of the numbers on how well the top lane is going to be with Young Peanut and Chia is Cute. They have probably the most even balance between them, but it does also come down to how well both the teams can sort of concoct a draft perfectly, and that's where we are at now, with Kha'Zix being the first ban with Alawi shortly after.
Yeah, a lot of pressure maybe on those solo laners this time around. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of jungle emphasis coming out too. That seems to be, on paper at least, the strong point for University of Maryland, Baltimore County, the Mad Dogs, the Big Dogs, as they call themselves here. So with that, the Orianna and the Vel'Koz coming quickly out thereafter. Don't want to deal with either of those, creating pressure elsewhere on the map. Some good utility, some good distance and range, get them out of there. And Veigar as well, just cut immediately. So they are really putting emphasis on these mages.
Yeah, they really don't want any of those because they're some of the most versatile mages you have out there. Vel'Koz could be a flex mid or support. Veigar, the same as well. Heck, you could throw Veigar up at the top lane if you wanted to. But with Zach being gone in the third ban for this final first phase from UMBC, you have this really open bottom lane if you want to try and grab a marksman right now. We still have the Zyracons that are very powerful. Kaisa is still on the board if you want to grab that, but they go with the Morgana. They were choking out the mages a lot, so I'm guessing grabbing that Morg is still going to be hanging into the bottom lane just as a sort of a denial against those more aggressive bottom sides like the Nautiluses, like the Alistars that want to get up in your face quickly, so you have the crowd control to be relieved from.
And I like this early enough into the draft as well. You talk about picking up a marksman very early on. GMU has the potential to do this in the second phase because they can really only be denied one marksman. And then even if they are, it kind of options the chance maybe if they want to try to counter it. So we know that's going to be the Kaisa this time around. The door's open for them to go with a couple of options here. I think UMBC's next pick is going to be very defining. I would be surprised if they didn't opt to pick up either the support or the jungle in this particular pick right here, just to not give too much away.
Yeah, and they could go with something a little bit more flexible, but with the Soraka pickup, it causes a little bit of a concern for me because the Morgana could technically be really hard to handle with Soraka having to be a little bit more short range. She does have her silence, which has a good amount of harassment, but it's not as big of a nuisance as things like Morgana binding or even the pool that can really whittle away at people in that bottom side. Lucian finalizing the bottom side for both of these teams, and then Nunu being the jungle pickup here, going into the hands of Rennie. So I haven't seen Nunu as of late, but if you're not playing Earth, he's pretty much like just on that average bar where he's going to be able to actually sort of roam around, get some harassment, possibly have some more of objective control as well, to where they can get into a more flexible and full-on aggressive solo lanes.
Well, you talk about aggression. Now here's Olaf coming out, an option that maybe they want to put onto the hands of Destin in the jungle there for UMBC. They're going to be playing that one pretty aggressively. You talk about the Soraka pick there earlier. I think just one thing I want to touch on to me is this tells me they have a lot of trust in Tomlin there, as this Kaisa is somebody that they want to get really
True.
going in this one. Keeping him alive is going to be absolutely critical for them. The Olaf pick as well means you see a lot of chaos attempts coming out in these fights. The Malphite taken off the table. They don't want to be dealing with that Wombo combo. They're not going to leave it as an option for GMU. They respond with the Vladimir, so they're still just going on this hard mage engage. Don't want to see it. It's already strangled out. Why not put a little bit more pressure on that pool?
Yeah, and pretty much what Maryland wants to do now in these final two bans is just to make sure that they don't have anything that has direct access to the back line. They might even look for a possible ban onto maybe an Aurelia, or even I'd say Zed could be a possibility, but I don't think over 9,000 is much of a Zed player. So more of those solo duelists that are able to have that access is what they're going to try and choke out away from Georgia. They actually, if they go with the karma ban, is weird. So at first glance, it doesn't go with that full on dive potential, but it's more of that laning phase nuisance where
Mm.
the top lane karma is still up in the air, or the mid lane karma where they have that constant pushing ability to where Nunu can roam with a second person to sort of optimize that ganking pressure and then possibly look for more neutral objective control. But now with a Victor ban being taken away, you're going to be looking at mostly just those solo lanes to see how those matchups are going to be going.
Yeah, that's pretty consistent with what we've seen everywhere else going in the ban phase. They just don't want to deal with as much of it. UMBC, they're going to opt for the Ornn here, like they're taking that into the top lane, leaving that last pick. So it is a little dangerous. And, this pool is so restricted already, but it tells me they probably have something, one or two options in mind that it's just going to come down to the wire. It's not a priority. They would have picked up that mid laner if it were an absolute necessity, but they're waiting on it at this point. See what GMU comes to the table with. Bring the counter out. Should be feeling pretty comfortable about that as the Akali going to be locked in for George Mason here. This is going to be an interesting one for me to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, because Maryland, they're saying it's okay. We can go ahead and grab this top laner that's a little bit more flexible into matchups in almost any scenario and be able to have the blind pick capability to find a counter in the mid lane to know exactly who they might be facing. Lysandra and Akali are in that criteria of being able to go in either of those solo lanes. So it comes down to more of a comfort pick and trying to predict what Chia or over 9,000 is going to be trying to grab. I'm expecting Akali to be sitting in that mid lane and with Lysandra to sit onto the top side against Ornn, where with the Kale, it does provide a more dangerous approach into the early game for UMBC, but their late game, their engagement, their kite potential for Kaisa, their neutral objective control is the only thing that's lacking. But when you're able to have a team fight composition at the level 13, level 14 mark where you are contesting for Baron, their GMU is never going to be able to actually out damage you and possibly even out sustain you, because now their only engagement is seeing if they can get a lucky Morgana binding, or if Lysandra is able to go in and get a nice engagement with her Glacial Prison or Glacial Tomb. And then from there, their short range carries might have enough breathing space to make the damage work, but you're already working with a lot of factors that UMBC has going in their favors for them to try and even contest that in a sense.
Certainly, they're going to have to play around that Call of the Forge God coming out from Ornn, right? That's going to be one of GMU's biggest concerns of when they can engage or look to be able to disengage. Some of the other ones here, I'm not as worried about. The Olaf is going to have a really hard time running into this team, right? Even with the Ragnarok pop, there's just so much raw damage coming out of George Mason. I don't think they're as worried about that. This is where I like the Soraka pick a little bit more. She can kind of buff that up, the Kaisa or the Olaf, just make them a little bit tougher to kill there at the end of the day. Not sure either way which one would be a better pickup there in that sense. But regardless, we do have our two team compositions here. The stage is set, and now all is left is to go through the actual draft itself. Quick little break. The 3-minute delay, of course, is keeping things fair and even here online. And then we will be getting ready to get into this game. As brief delay here as the lobby did collapse. We're getting the teams back into it. Everyone ready to get rocking and rolling into this game.
Yeah, so there's just going to be a little bit of that time to figure out exactly where they need to be going because of the lobby crashing and all. But it's nonetheless, it gives us a little bit more time to think of how the early game and sort of this mid-game stage is going to be going. Because in the early game, I would definitely give it over to George Mason because of the aggression with Morgana Lucian into the Kaisa Soraka. Soraka is extremely vulnerable against that. If she steps just a little bit past a minion, she could get snagged up or even just berated down by Lucian by himself. And even if Kai'Sa's trading potential is good, you don't have it optimized because usually you have Kai'Sa paired with one of those sort of crowd controlled supports like the Brahms, Tom Kench's, Nautiluses, so on and so forth, those frontline players. And with this aggression in this bottom lane, it gives a lot of volatility for the junglers to be looking at it for both Rennie and for Destin to set their eyes in this bottom side and really make sure that either the Kaisa is able to keep alive and Tomlin is able to get to that point where he will just out damage his opponent in Ice is Slippery, or
Right.
you want to make sure that Lucian is always a step ahead and always constantly being able to have a couple items above his counterpart and is able to sort of keep pace with them. So those would be the two questions. That's where those junglers might keep on. But you're also setting into the Kale and the Akali matchup, which again has that same volatility because those power spikes, when they hit early, it's going to hit really hard for GMU.
You like to see it. Yeah, we talked about that early enough in as well with Kaisa being the stressful pick or the stressed pick, I'm sorry, for UMBC. Maybe stressful for GMU there, depending
Yeah.
on how well this one pops off into lane. And dealing with that Nunu early on for those ganks could get tricky before a certain time when he's going to get to a point where he can really come online a little bit more, not as much perhaps as the Olaf, where he's just going to hit 6, pop Ragnaroks, and then surprise, hey, bindings can't stop me anymore, right? Just running into the face of his opponent. So I'm actually going to be looking to the likes of the Lissandra here, wherever that one does end up. We think it's probably going to be top running in to come out. And actually, no, it looks like it's going to be the Akali for Chia is Cute, locking that one in up top. So the Lissandra will be going to the mid lane, barring any crazy lane swap. So either way, the one that runs the teleport, right? That's the one I'm looking at as maybe the one that needs to come in and play a little bit of the aggressive game for George Mason, getting this bot lane rolling the direction they need it. We got the Ornn early, and it's just not going to be able to keep up as much with a teleport in prior to that call of the Forge God. So be looking for, if early aggression is going to go down, I could see that being a good outlet. And look here, the Lissandra's actually running teleport as well, over 9,000. So maybe some tricks up the sleeve of George Mason here.
Yeah, it's all right. And even with the Akali going up against Ornn instead of the Kale, it gives Kale an even safer lane and actually can sort of contest with the pushing capability. Akali is slightly faster than Lissandra and just pushing out those creep waves. And even though Akali has that just more obnoxious harassment against Ornn, who sort of needs to know exactly where he's looking for his breath to get the brittle procs applied and really to just sort of trade evenly in those matchups. Akali has that advantage. It's not that much of a problem until you're able to get that level 6 before that Ornn. If you're able to get the execute and get that onto Ornn and he is not respecting you and you are able to whittle him away, then it'll be a problem. But both the Kale and the Ornn matchups are very neutral if they just play it neutral. It's very much in their hands to look for their actual like oversteps or for their errors. And even though Akali and Lissandra are more aggressive, they're the ones that need to be a little bit more careful because they can get overzealous, they can get cocky, and that's when those slip ups will happen. And both Ornn and Kale have the tools to actually really punish you when it comes down to those hiccups.
Punishment's going to be key for both of these teams. It is a best of 3 series, so one mistake can cost you the entire game in League of Legends. We know exactly how punishing it can be. However, the whole series momentum, another question on the table here as we do get ready to go into this 3-minute delay. Of course, that means we're going to be throwing it over to a quick break, but when we come back, we'll see exactly how the scales of game number 1 tend to be tipped.
the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, 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 for you. Won't you let the light shine through?
Us through the break. Now we are getting in onto Summoner's Rift for all the action. Of course, it means we got George Mason on the blue side, University of Maryland, Baltimore County over on the red. We'll give these guys the introductions they deserve. Of course, for George Mason, that means it's Chia is Q in the top lane, running that Akali. Rennie in the jungle, taking to the Nunu. Over 9,000 Asians in the mid lane, playing that Lissandra. Ice is Slippery, being a little bit redundant or just self-explanatory there in the bottom lane. And Lafasa rounding it out on the support Morgana.
And of course, on University of Maryland, Baltimore County, we have our big dogs, Young Peanut in the top lane, Destin on that jungle, Promethean in that mid lane, and Tomlon and Frog in that bottom lane ADC support position. So, sitting in mid lane, just really going to be calm before the storm here. A little bit of a slight invade, though, for this top side for Chia and 9,000, but just for that vision control, because even though we talked a lot about those lane matchups during the break, it was mostly these two junglers on where that question of how they're going to start pathing, because then from there you can understand how those lanes are going to start behaving. It's going to be very traditional as it is, both bottom sides, the marksman and support helping out their junglers to get those leashes started, and then sort of a quick shift into their top sides of the jungles, and then possibly looking for maybe some mid aggression or domination for those rift scuttlers, because if you have that lane advantage and that lane control, you can start to get your jungler a little bit faster online if he's able to even get double and get both of those rift scuttles on board.
Definitely agree with starting the junglers on the strong side of the map here, both going with the quick leashes as best they can. Olaf, obviously something you always want to do that with if at all possible, so now he'll be getting ready to end up on the top side of things by the time he might want to make his first gank there.
Yeah.
No, obviously, projection as to whether or not he's actually going to do that. So much of it depends on how this lane is getting pushed in. But Peanut's not off to the worst start here, being able to aggress on this Ornn. Not getting bullied out by Chia is Cute this early on. So do like to see that coming out from him up here. Rest of the game off to a pretty safe start. No one really trying too much against each other just yet. That's always how these collegiate games tend to be. I always emphasize and stress, you don't really scrim these teams very often, the ones in your pool. So it's just like going up against people you've never seen before. All you have is that online information, the scouting that you can do with the op.ggs and so forth. So the beginnings of these games do tend to be the teams feeling each other out. And then the pace really tends to quicken from there once somebody feels like they've got a good run for it. Speaking of, there's Lafasa going in the root. That's so quick, so clean. And the first blood coming out for Ice is Slippery.
Yep, and well done there from Rennie, who's decided to go more of that Korean jungling strategy. Just clear out your entire bottom side in this blue pit. And then with that level 3 proc, with the Gromp that you finish, you are in a perfect position to just go in, line up with the snowball, and get those kills. It also opens up a lot of aggression here for this bottom side. Like we said, that Rift Scuttle control. Now that you did show that Rennie is on that bottom side, Destin can look for the Rift Scuttle in the top end. So it is going to be an even trade throughout. But with the first blood onto your marksman, now you're going to start to really set those eyes on. Like we said in the beginning of the game, that if you're able to keep Lucian sort of ahead of the Kai'Sa in a sense of footing and itemization, then you're constantly going to be able to have that advantage in skirmish and teamfight pressure. But if you do ever lose that and it gets a little bit more to an equal ground, that Kai'Sa will eventually outrun you. So keeping Icy Slippery in that advantage is going to be of optimal strategy here for GMU.
We know exactly how important that Kai'Sa is to the big dogs as well. And now Uchi is Cute in a little bit of trouble. You might have to flash over this wall. No, the dash is there. Of course, forgot about that one. EMU getting out of that one scot-free pretty safely. No return kill on the side of the big dogs just yet. Nothing to come back for that one. And all this posturing around the blue buff, not going to really amount to much. They're going to see Rennie take that, and they're just not going to be able to do anything about it.
Yeah, no worries on that one. And even at the point here for just sort of a sense of catch up on the side of University of Maryland, it's going to be extremely difficult just because you have she is Akali with the shuriken flip to get over those walls like we just saw, like having the glacial claw on over 9,000's Lissandra. So there's a lot of tools that their laners have to sustain themselves and play it careful, but they need to make sure that they don't go overly aggressive. Where on the sides of Ornn and Kale respectively, that's where that just slight overstep can be absolute punishment for them. So Destin going to be playing more of a counter ganking style and seeing if he can out farm the Nunu, which is already a task in and of itself.
Of course, yeah, Nunu being able to clear so effectively thanks to that good old consume. Nunu, it changed a little bit, that not as much. Always going to be a staple of that particular champion, or now champions, should I say. I think it is technically two at this point, but either way, we do see some aggression coming out from Destin. He's been willing to get on the other side of the jungle and try to play in the face there, just slow it down. But this is an untold new level of aggression for the guy so far in these first 6 minutes, trying to take the Infernal Drake by himself. Maybe going to get sniffed out here. Yes, will indeed be spotted. Now it's just a matter of if he goes over the wall. That's the flash. And no, even with the Consume Smite, not going to be able to get it. That one is picked up by Destin. He may get returned back on for this one, but Kale is there in just enough time. Rennie now in a little bit of trouble as the teleport comes down. Barmethian gets that one. Tomlin trying to get in the party, in the fight as Chia is cute is here. Now we got a lot of action going down as everyone's here in the river. 9,000 Asians doing what he can, but look at that. Peanut's got the knock up, and 9,000 Asians goes down. More to come, perhaps. No, the flash out just stalls it, but that was a full team kill participation coming out from the side of Maryland, Baltimore County, and great kills being picked up. One for Destin on the Olaf, the other by Methian on the Kale. Beautifully done.
Yeah, it was a splendid job by University of Maryland, even though they had the very close to the chest bet with the Infernal Drake at the start. The fact that you were Rennie wasn't able to get that smite consume and secure that objective, and then falling into that trap, pieces like, okay, we can possibly take Destin out with a perfect roam from Baromithian with the Kale ultimate to keep him alive just long enough. And then after that, it was sort of like a tripping over their own feet with George Mason, because they knew that there was more tools on the board for them and they had more immediate members, but the survivability of the Soraka and of the Kale kept them long enough up to where Young Peanut could have came in on that Ornn and really turned the fight around. So well done on the side of University of Maryland, Baltimore.
Yeah, got to be feeling great about that one. Of course, the big dogs absolutely where they need to be in the game after this particular one for themselves. Getting that early advantage going to be so essential. They weren't able to get it on the Kaisa, who's still feeling a little bit behind there in that bottom lane, and I think that one's going to be a point of soreness for them as this does hope to develop into something a little bit better for Tomlin. He's going to be looking, but a little bit of an engage coming in. The flash is already burned in the top lane. Chia is cute, getting the slay and onto Young Peanut. Just nice, clean solo kill down to the wire, and did have to get really aggressive for that one, but made it happen beautifully. Knew that he could punish Young Peanut early. The flash is burned as well, and so that one's going to tip the scales just a little bit now back towards balancing things out, and nice one back on the board for George Mason.
Yeah, that was the overconfidence of Young Peanut just going in a little bit. He was already under-itemized. It was that Hextech Revolver against just a Null Magic Mantle at the time. So already going in with a bad trade, pushed in forward, doesn't respect how much damage an Akali and Conqueror can throw out. Now Destin actually seeing if he can find the Akali for himself.
Yeah, he wants the revenge, but meanwhile in the bottom lane, we have a fight breaking out as Tomlin's in a little bit of trouble here. Rennie gets that one, slays out yet again. Another one taken down in the 3v2 jungle gank. Tomlin the victim yet again.
Yep, keeping that continuous aggression and that pressure in the bottom side with the Nunu. As expected, you need to keep that pressure up, and if you're able to grab some turret plates too on Dilution, that's even more lovely, because you already have that 10 CS differential that's starting to build up, because, you know, Tomlin really hasn't been able to stay in lane for as long as our boy Ice is Slippery has. So going to be able to get that turret plate here, going to be dropping you down to the fourth one, so they've already taken two. It's splendid job for them, and it's going to be making sure that when he goes back, he's sitting on 2,000 gold as it is. Go back, go ahead, pretty much buy the entire recipe, while actually Chia getting in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, Call of Forge God does stall him up a little bit. No flash. The dash not enough to get him out of range either. A young Peanut picks that one up clean as can be. Destin getting the assist on that one.
Yep. Overzealous. Yeah, and you don't have a flash either. And it's the problem that if you do use the Shuriken flip, that's your only way out of the Call of the Forge God as well. If it hits you, you're pretty much almost guaranteed unless you're really able to sort of out mind trick your opponent with. Now, Rennie just making sure he can defend topside just a little bit more so they don't get as many plays.
Yeah, he'll take a bit of a bruising for that one. Actually, fairly into dive territory at this point. Was able to consume just a little bit for the heal there. But they decided to think better of it. Peanut and Destin don't want to run it. I know they have potentially better places to be as the blue buff is coming up. The Rift Herald as well, just crossing the time on that map. And meanwhile, a little bit of action bot lane. No. Tomlin low yet again. The Soraka wish has to come down, but he's stunned up. And Slippery takes another one there. They've got it to the point they don't even need Rennie. Now this is bad news. Gracious. The blue buff taken away by the side of UMBC. They're going to feel okay about that one, but man alive, they have to do something to staunch the bleeding on this Kaisa pick, and they have to do it fast.
Well, you were recalling in the middle of the lane almost, so that was completely Tomlin's fault for just staying out there and not respecting the fact that LaFoss's Morgana can just throw a Q from a mile away and secure the kill. You didn't even have your support there either, and on top of that, Isis Slippery decided to pay the Soraka attacks early, is getting the Executioner's calling, so that healing reduction's down even further, but Barithian in some trouble.
Maybe has to pop the ult to defend himself, but Rennie is there channeling his own ultimate, and just like that, 9,000 Asians. Little aggressive on this one, and what a turnaround coming from Barmithian. Beautifully done there. Brings us back to an even keel on the kills. 4-4 apiece.
Yeah, like I was saying, even though Barmithian and Young Peanut have losing lane matchups, it's really up to Chia and Q to never slip up on those hesitations. And even though you have the advantage, you've got to respect your opponent just as much because they have the capability to take you out. Speaking of like advantages going on that you really don't like to see, 24 CS differential is creeping up. Young Peanut on that Ornn has really been playing the farming simulator against his colleague who's been more focused on just trying to get as many kills as possible. Haven't turned out for the best, and a second Infernal Drake on the board. You already have that vision control in your favor, but with Rennie having that utter dominance in this bottom side, making sure that Isis Slippery is stronger than his counterpart, it's really going to be up to a battle of how well Rennie can sort of redeem himself with that Consume Smite again.
Yeah, here we go. Now the Dragon being pulled out yet again. Infernal, the second one on the board. If UMBC can take this one out, the big dogs, you know they want it, but Rennie hiding out in the shadows here. He wants to come in. The Dragon will reset, and it looks like UMBC may be a little bit more interested in trying to just pick out a fight here. The top lane is going okay for Young Peanut thus far. Both laners do have the teleport. Dragon already very low. That's another one just outsmited. Rennie can't get it, but the fight is breaking out yet again. Barmithian is taken down. Wilmore comes, the call, Forjog comes out. Tomlin getting his first kill back onto the Nunu. Could be huge, and 9,000 Asians is now on the run. Peanut, can he turn this around? His own health bar so low, and Slippery picks that one back up. This is now all going the way of George Mason as they pick up 3 kills in that. I'm sorry, 4. Make it 4. Over just the one, losing Rennie. They lost the Drake as well, but what a huge pickup to turn that one back around.
Yeah, and a more planned fight there coming in from George Mason. This time, even though they did lose the Smite battle, they didn't panic. They came in with a game plan, probably more because this actual Dragon didn't catch them off guard as much. Now that they knew that they were contesting it, they said, look, we have these advantages in Isis Slippery and over 9,000 Asians, so making sure that they're able to get to the back line and really sort of push these survivability factors of Barmithian and Frog off of those carries that are so important, and being able to sort of temper those skills and temper their burst damage enough to where they're able to actually beat the sustainability of their composition that University of Maryland has, goes over for them in that favor, gives them that 1,000 gold lead, but they're still struggling with this lane control, and that is really where University of Maryland is still holding on to this game.
One thing I do want to draw our attention to here is the amount of pressure that is now mounting onto the shoulders of Ice is Slippery here. He has half of his team's kills. 2 of those going over to Chia is cute. That's not a bad place to have them. 2 of them onto Rennie is not what you love as much. You maybe want that more in the hands of the mid or the support at this point in the game at least, but taking stock now. If they can shut down the Lucian, the fight potential opens up very quickly now for the side of the big dogs. So coming out of this one. They had a great push to get through, take the first first tower of the game, actually, for that matter, bring us just about dead even in gold, despite their kill deficit at this point. And we're able to knock quite a bit off of the mid lane tower, the second tier as well, before the plates were gone.
Yeah, and it's really just more of a question of how quickly these carries can get to their power spikes for the side of George Mason, because you don't have the Hextech Gunblade just yet on Shia's Akali. So that's really where this investment is coming in, to see if they can take out Young Peanut.
Ooh, well, now maybe a little bit coming down in the top lane here is Young Peanut, Call the Forge God. Will it be enough to save him? Because that's just standing right in the middle of Rennie's ult. But the Unstoppable, the Ragnarok is popped, and now they're going to be able to turn that one back around. Rennie does go down to the hands of Destin. And now with Barmithian here, this is all bad news for Chia is cute. He's taken out, and another one back into the hands of the Kale. Maybe a bit of a revitalization here on the top side coming out for the likes of UMBC. This tower could be in some real trouble.
Yeah, and with the demolish on Young Peanut, this is definite another turret in the hands and in the pockets of the big dogs, making sure that they have just a few steps ahead of that gank for Rennie and Chia. So even though that investment has paid off, like you said, with a 4-0 Lucian on Ice's Slippery, they are continuing to make sure Tomlin and Frog really get to know every single detail of their own turrets. And sitting in this top side as well, with the blue being taken for Promethean, it's at this stage where both of the advantages are sort of flopped, right? Or flipped around, where you have a lot of solo lane aggression and dominance from the side of University of Maryland, just because they were able to survive and get to this mid-game stage with really very little consequences, only 3 deaths on them, where you have a 1-4-1 Kaisa and a 0-1 Soraka, who have pretty much never really had a chance to even breathe. So getting at this stage, you have Dragon going to be coming up in the next 2 minutes in that short amount of time, and Baron is going to be up in the next 4. So these teams are going to start to prepare and sort of plan out places on where they can start to put their vision, look at where can we find these picks for George Mason, where can we sort of catch the members of Big Dogs off guard and really continue to get those kills on our side. And for the side of University of Maryland, it's more of a team coordinated effort of saying, okay, where can we get this vision control to make sure that that does not happen, and we're able to hold the control in our favor and make sure that we have every single tool at the ready for those big fights, those ultimate objective controlling situations for those Dragons and those Barons.
The Dragon's actually a place where I want to leverage just a little bit of criticism onto the head of George Mason, and I may not get the time as Froggy's getting jumped here in his own jungle. This is bad news, but the damage just not there enough. He actually may have the time. No, 9,000 Agents is able to get in. LaFossa gets the kill credit for that one, but it's bought enough time now for the remaining members to slip in. Tomlin gets a big kill coming up there, and that one's going to turn right back onto the head as Rennie as well goes down just in time for the Dragon to come on up. That is not what you want to see if you are George Mason.
Yeah, and actually, I think that was a perfect point to bring up at the exact time with the Dragon, right? Because you're at this stage where almost every single tool in your composition, with the new control, with the lane pressure of your solo laners, with the 4-0 Lucian you have, you shouldn't be losing these Dragons as George Mason, but they're taking them from under your nose. You had the first one gone in almost a surprise, and then the second one was more of that slight contestation, and this third one is sort of a consequence of you doing the exact same overzealous aggressiveness and not fully planning it out. Yeah, and it's something that they might have either stepped too far, or it's just the sustainability of University of Maryland pairs up with that over-aggression, and it's just coming into that unfortunate punishment for them.
It is hard to ascertain sometimes. Some of these teams really are just so good at sniffing out a team's aggression level and punishing them accordingly. Something we don't exactly get to get familiar with in the greater collegiate sphere, because there are so many teams to cover each week. But with that in mind, it looks like UMBC is doing a really good job thus far controlling around this bottom side, despite the fact that they have been losing it. And now that's kind of given them a point to leverage. Tomlin, he was 0-3 or 0-4 at one point. Now he's 2-4 on the board. It's still not the best score, especially when you consider the 2 deaths on the hands of Frog as well. But has been coming back into this one well, has been doing what he needs to fight back into this game. The CS deficit is something I'd like to see him attempt to chip away at, being 40 down at this point. Obviously not ideal, but they are trying to pick up where they can here, and he's kind of out of that bottom lane now that they've been able to get the tower in more of just a kind of unilateral position on the map. And we'll see what that's able to do for him.
Yeah, and that's even the scarier part of this, right? Is the fact that they picked lanes that were actually a
Uh-oh,
little bit
back
stronger
on.
matchup. But hold on.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
well.
done. This is actually
Rest in
just both
peace.
members. You know, we talk about punishing aggression. Well,
Yeah,
oh
that
no.
is.
Okay, it happens. It happens. You get caught
Yeah.
out. Baron's not spawning for another 30 seconds. You will be up before then. That's the good news. No dragons on the board. The remaining members could probably
True.
hold mid tower here, but George Mason catching them at a perfect time. UMBC getting really punished for that one.
But that's exactly what we wanted out of George Mason, was
for
the
sure.
fact that they needed to get vision to get those picks and me able to have the numbers advantage. And now Rennie can actually just dive this turret.
Ooh, they want to for sure. They're trying to get behind it. Taking the aggression of 2 towers is rough, though. Barmithian is the first one to fall. Lafasa will get taken back down and around. And man alive, both of these teams are so determined to just go to the edge of the earth, killing the other team and then themselves in the process. She is cute. Holding out at least on the top side, dealing some damage to this turret, but losing 4 there on a dive behind the towers. It's like you get 2, and they think they have to do it just now. George Mason are likely going to lose the Baron for this one.
Yeah, like, that was so weird. I understand the ambition to do that, but you know that Baron's going to be up soon. You know that they have the respawn timers that are still short to actually try and come back and defend for that second tier turret, but you just straight up dive it, and now Destin has the possibility to take it, but
Nope. Not quite taken out this time just yet. Tomlin does get 9,000 Asians down there trying to get more out of this one. Chia is cute, taken back as well. And the Baron and all 5 surviving members, more importantly, for you MBC, are striding out of this one in style.
Yeah, that entire Baron was due to the consistent consistent hiccups and overaggressions of George Mason University, because they went over through that turret, and then the fact that Rennie wasn't even there to even contest it. It was just the solo laners who were able to get there in time and try and even fight it out, but they have no actual frontline or even a sense of control in that pit. So it was more of a suicide mission to look for that one. So you got to respect him for the attempt, but it was very much folly from the start. So now you have a team fight composition that can play just straight down the mid lane. They can have the control. They have the engagement, like we said. They have the pushing capability. They don't have that great of siege, though, but that's luckily where the Baron is there to compensate.
You'd think maybe a Mountain Drake or 2 would have been something they'd like to see, but doesn't matter, as the 2 Infernals and the Ocean certainly helping them out at this point in the game. Trying now to set up these multi-lane sieges with the Ornn on the top side. They are leaving the bot lane a little bit exposed. Chia is cute, has a teleport, so can push this one out pretty freely, get back in at a time where it's convenient. The problem is, if they set up well on this tower, I don't think he'll even have time to teleport. Wants to actually get it behind them. He's coming in, getting ready to go. 9,000 Asians with a good engage so far, but it's only on the Frog that they've got the real damage now. Destin is godlike, killing him back now. 9,000 Asians in some real trouble as he's going so hard for this. And Chia in the back line, he was trying to get the flank, but now he may just be in trouble. Lafasa down too, and that one's picked up by Tomlin. It is now 20-13. The double kill, the ace, the tower now certainly not long for this world as UMBC just cleans house.
Yeah, and that's the sustainability of these carries that have come online and the late game scaling that is just absolutely going rampant in the compositions of University of Maryland, destroying the ranks of George Mason University in that fight. And it's this capability of how powerful these late game scalers are. They are safe in lane just enough to where they can get to those points that it really gives them the green light to run wild. And now being able to get that inhibitor, yep, safe call. Don't go overzealous on that one. You have an Infernal Drake to answer, a third and final one on top of that to be a 24% bonus onto your attack damage and ability power. So that's a win-win here for University of Maryland, Baltimore.
Just devastating power at this point. We've actually brought Tomlin back into line now. He's got an even break-even point on his KD. Yeah. 5-5 now, totally back in the discussion here, especially with the towers as well. The gold, curious to see actually what that's going to be, the split. He's got about 9,000 for so. It's only about 600 behind us, Lucian, now in the grand scheme of things. So back to a fantastic portion for himself after what was really a rough start. The rest of his team balling out to keep things so well together. Take a look at Destin here. He's crept into an unsuspecting 8-0-10 score for himself. That means of the 20 kills taken now by UMBC, he's only missed out on 2 of those.
That's the unsung hero factor right there. Destin being able to just be everywhere he needed to be at the right time. That counter ganking pressure, the objective control, forcing Rennie to play his game at the right times. Even though he did have a losing bottom lane, Rennie played that part well. If you're only winning one lane, you're not going to be able to win the entire map when Destin is able to really take it under his control and put you underfoot. So now this bottom lane going to be the next target here for the side of University of Maryland. Big Dogs set their eyes on it.
They want to get in for more. This is now the aggression coming out. 9,000 Asians in some real trouble. Has to self-ult and flash out of that one. Not perfectly set up just yet. The tower siege is really what they want to focus their eyes on, as more is to come. The binding not connecting means this tower just going to be about half HP before the wave comes back in. But with the Baron expired, they're really just trying to buy time here, as they do have Young Peanut in the top side. The aggression, though, coming out. They want to get more for this one. George Mason, Barmithian, the first one to get in. That's the killing spree. Already trying to turn this one back, but Lafasa goes down too much from the Morgana. And now Destin ready to re-engage at the slightest hint of misfortune. Ice is slippery in some real trouble. Barmithian rampaging, and that one's taken out and away. More to come, perhaps. This tower now looked like it may survive just a little bit, but the push saying maybe not.
Yeah, the turret's still up, but Ornn's almost trying to really knock onto your Nexus door, so you might need to go answer the more primary choice. And Peanut, look at how tanky he is. This is the power, like you said, once you get to level 13, 14 with these Ornn compositions, with this late game scaling, it's really hard to take anyone down in that matchup. Young Peanut getting out, tanky 2 turrets to boot, going to be looking to make sure that they can take the Nexus as well.
This one just not long for this world at all. Absolutely devastating play once they finally got the ball rolling for University of Maryland, Baltimore County. The big dogs coming in with a big game, #1. The GGs come down. And just like that, we have our first game in the books.
Yeah. And starting the game off and starting the series off with the 2-0 performance last week, coming in with a good amount of bark, showing that they have the bite to do it, with Destin really running wild on that Olaf. Well done on his part. I definitely give the MVP over to that. And it helped bring helped bring his bot lane's morale back up. It's like the fact that you have this 9-0 Olaf saying, okay, we've got this, don't worry. I was able to beat a Nunu in a smite fight twice with the Infernal Drakes. Kind of gives a lot of people respect for how well you're able to time those smite buttons on the point, and especially in those pressure situations. So well done on his part. And now for George Mason, it's a question on how well they're going to be able to recuperate, see what their next sort of drafting formula is going to be, because now that life is on the line for them. This series is on that match point, and we'll have to see if they're able to come back with something creative.
Yeah, definitely now to the game #2 drawing board for George Mason. The momentum all in the hands of UNBC. The big dogs feeling great about that first particular game. So we're going to give these players a little bit of time to break, discuss strategy, get ready to get into game #2, where hopefully for George Mason, they can make the change necessary and bring us to that third game. But in the meantime, we're going to throw it over to break. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go, quick shout out, of course, to GameStop, power to the players, as they have their weeklies. You can find out all sorts of fun information about what they're doing in esports at GameStop.com/esports. In the meantime, we're going to be throwing it over to a quick break. When we come back, game #2. Don't go anywhere. Into the night, I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, for you, for you, for you, for you. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking with us through the break there, as we did see UMBC make a statement game against George Mason. Now we got the side swap. We got the teams both ready to rock and roll, jumping into the draft for game number 2. Some looming questions as now being put up on that red side. George Mason, what are they going to do to fix this series and get it back on track to force a game 3?
Yeah, because honestly, their drafting was not too shabby coming in from this beginning, which is that blue side. And now going into the red side, they're going to be able to possibly try and do exactly what the big dogs did to them, where is getting that comfort pick in the solo lane and having that as a flexibility. Because last time they did pick the Akali and Lissandra for those final pickups, and something that could deal with Ornn in their own way, but they didn't know what the KO was going to be going up against. So that is where you have these scenarios for both of these teams where honestly red side is a little bit better and more advantageous for those matchups, not to mention like you can get a duo immediately if you want that duo bot lane, because like we said, the first, or like we saw moreover, the first 2 picks for both of these teams were the ADC, the marksman, and the support. And so for them it's like, okay, this is perfect. Let's go ahead and grab those now. And when we can grab it both, we can possibly get that Zyra for free. We could possibly find even the possibility for the Kaisen Nautilus, or heck, let's go real aggressive and do both mages. If the Veigar makes it through, you could do something like a Veigar with a Zyra or something like that. Get really spicy and creative, because Veigar Zyra lanes are really annoying to deal with.
Well, completely not to my surprise at all, the Olaf is taken out of the table. George Mason, they know they don't want to see that one again. After the statement game that we saw coming out, I just so powerful coming out there from Destin at the end of the game. So definitely don't want to see him on that as well. Would not be surprised if the entire jungle pool is restricted a little bit for that particular reason. The Zach ban out as well as UMBC, not really deviating from what they were able to pull out last time. It would be the Vel'Koz if they wanted to keep every ban consistent this time around and not change the game plan at all.
Yeah, and I don't really know if the Alawi is a necessary ban. Yes, it is obnoxious. If you're really good on it, like it is a almost dominant win rate, sure. But the problem is that Alawi does eventually get outscaled, and that her optimization is so niche that you could possibly free that up to maybe take that Kai'Sa off the board, maybe take the Kale, as we mentioned, off the board, or even something that was more obnoxious, maybe even the Nunu if you wanted to as well. Take that away, because Nunu was good, but the fact that Destin just did so well in those Smite matchups is really, really what caused it to go over. But with the Kha'Zix being the first pick, that was banned before. That was the first ban that GMU did throw down. So now Kha'Zix looking to be something that is very comfortable for Destin.
Happy to pick it up there too. This time though, leaving potentially the Xayah and Rakan if GMU wanted to go that route, and they will pick up the lovers duo immediately early. So straightforward. So pretty quick. They picked up their AD support immediately last time as well. So keeping true to the same patterns, maybe this time wanted to take the Kai'Sa back for themselves on the hands of UMBC, not having to put it up to the Lucian this time around. Feel a little bit more comfortable with that matchup at hand. Can't say I disagree with it. Leona as well. This is an interesting one to come through.
I like the Leona because it does cause, even though a one-dimensional approach to the bottom lane, it does so much damage when you're able to find it. And it's sort of the same per philosophy as the Nautilus, where it's crowd control on crowd control. Get the Kai'Sa void stacks as fast as possible, so you have that massive amount of burst damage. Like you have the dash in, you have the lockdown, you have the stun, you have the ultimate with the stun as well, and then you have that extra beefiness on top with the Daybreak shield. So you have a lot going for you, but like we said, it's one dimensional. You can't really walk back with Leona. So if you have that same aggression and attention in that bottom lane coming in from the jungle, then you're going to still have that trouble with Echo, who is most likely going to be sitting in the jungle because that is his most popular way to play in the current state.
Yeah, curious to see where they're going to run that one out, but jungle does seem to be the likelihood, would keep things consistent as well, meaning the solo laners are the question marks for this next portion of picking and banning. Some flex ones, not surprising to see them taken off the table. The Vladimir banned out yet again. They don't want to see it. I actually want to drive the conversation really quickly back to what you were saying with the Alawi ban and where that was kind of a question mark for us for the side of UMBC. If you take a look at their top laner's performance last game and just how well Youngkin was able to do, he broke even. I think he was 2-2 or 3-2 by the end of the game there. But
Yeah.
was just kind of holding pretty consistent. If there is a place where I think you might be able to exploit some weakness or maybe need to draw some comfort bands, some things that he's just not as great playing against, that could be the case. It could just be that's the way he knows he should play Ornn and give the team the rest of the opportunities. Very utility, very engaged folks with Call of the Forge
Yeah.
God, beef it up, soak up the damage, and just walk away. Or this could be a potential, hey, look, if someone plays Alawi pretty well, UMBC might be showing some of their issues on stream. But either way, Vladimir Veigar taken out, Malphite Lissandra as well, and the Malzahar is what rolls through for GMU.
Okay, so and again, it's sort of the same approach with this mid lane where it is wave control and making sure that the enemy mid laner doesn't really have that chance to roam with your counterpart, right? So you have a lot of lockdown on that too. Like with the Malzahar, the amount of damage that comes in with his dots is ridiculous. So now going into honestly a blind matchup for him, he's gonna have to see what he's gonna be going up against. Is a little bit of a downer because Malzahar is good into those more comfortable situations. If someone is able to take down his crowd control shield from his passive and then get on him again, that's really where he starts to have a little bit of trouble. So the jungle attention is going to be optimal for UMBC to really drive that one home. And then the Gnar being picked up for their top lane, showing that he's going to be comfortable on that side. It has the possibility to really cause a split pushing threat. And then the Victor, which was banned last game as well, is into the hands of their mid laners. So now you've got these teams that they're really going to be good at skirmishing in those 2v2, 3v3 matchups, but at the team fight, they're a little bit weaker than they were last time around.
I like what I'm seeing from George Mason here, honestly, to begin with this draft, just in that they're flipping the script almost entirely. Now, some of the things they did ban against UMBC have come through. The Victor and the Kazakhs, namely the Kaisa, as well, something that they were obviously wanting to prioritize by taking it for themselves. At this point,
Yep.
no team is running the same champion yet again in their composition. And after a loss like you just sustained, if you are GMU, at this point, changing the script, flipping the game up a little bit and trying something new is the right idea because you definitely don't want to just run into that same game, make the same mistakes, and get punished for the same scenario. Now, there were things in their play that obviously could have cleaned that up compositionally. We saw the overaggression and so forth. But at this point, I like that they're trying something new with the draft. We'll see if it's enough for this second game to get things back on track for them.
And this time, too, you have a more reliable sense of engagement here for the side of George Mason because you have the Rakan that can go in with the quickening and the grand entrance. You have Echo who can come in with the the convergence, the time bomb convergence, where he is able to get that massive stun zone, which can sort of actually moreover sort of migrate people and shepherd them into your true engagement that you want. And then of course you have the Ornn as well with the Call of the Forge God to be that reliable mid-range engagement as well, and possibly even some disengagement and sort of side peeling with his whole kit. So a little bit more well-rounded, not as aggressive into those full success stories that their last composition was. So it gives them a little bit more of an even footing if your composition gets past that 25-minute stage. Like we said, with the level 13, 14 power spikes that Ornn gives his entire team with his free gold and free stats. But now on UMBC's side, they have a more early game invested jungler with Kha'Zix. You have sort of the same philosophy in your bottom lane with making sure that Kaisa is able to get to a power point, but it is more aggressive because of that Leona. But now the Gnar is more of the bigger question for me because Gnar is very hit or miss. If he does get online, if Gnar is able to really become that split push threat and then sort of swing into those offhand team fights with his ultimate, then it's going to be a massive concern for George Mason University. But luckily, they have the wave control tools to really take care of that.
I like the Gnar pickup, particularly here coming up. Even though the Ornn was picked against the Gnar, I could see this really being a focal point for UMBC to want to get that Ornn on the back foot early. I feel like if they can do that, their composition is going to get to just such a raw, even beefcake point with the Leona and the Gnar that if Ornn is not in a healthy place to kind of mitigate some of that and copy and return some of that tank potential, they're just going to be able to roll over GMU with the damage that they have in their hands here. So if they can put that one on the back foot early enough, I could see that being a huge move for UMBC. It's just a matter of whether or not they could play around it. Obviously, this is going to be something George Mason, I'm sure, very comfortable with, very aware of the idea cutting into this game, especially with how aggressively Destin was able to play and capitalize on that last game.
Yeah, and I'd actually say Gnar has an even stronger matchup to Ornn than the Akali Ornn matchup was, because you have that ranged addition in the mini Gnar, you have the health shred with the hyper passive as well. So being able to sort of stay a safe distance away from the Ornn is going to be beneficial for him in that bottom side. So it does give him that extra plus, but it does go into a sense of those team fights being a little bit weaker, but their mid game and their power spikes do come earlier because of just how their composition is fit up. So going into this early game, going into the first few minutes, once it gets around to that level 4, level 5 scenario for both these teams, that's when the action's really going to start to pick up, because I don't expect these teams to go into level 1 matchups, but you never know with the Leona. You don't
We
see
hope,
them as
right?
much, so
We can
yeah,
only
it
hope.
could be possible. Leona 1v1s or level 1s could get really crazy really quick. So I'm excited to see if they actually do try and be a little bit more aggressive this time around, because they are a matchup. This is game point for them, and UMBC might be a little bit more experimental.
Right. I mean, we saw so much aggression coming out from GMU, sometimes in places they didn't need to be. UMBC able to turn that one back up on its head and punish them for it. Now,
Yeah.
if they can not just swap the sides of the rift, but swap the storylines as well, they'd be happy to do that. Catch UMBC, punish them for their aggression. This is the time when they're going to be feeling themselves coming in after a win like that one. You know that morale has to be high in that team room in particular, but with that, of course, we are getting into our lovely, fabulous 3-minute delay, which means we're going to be taking just a bit of a break here. When we come back, we'll be ready to see if this series continues or concludes in game number 2. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking with us through the break here as we are now ready to see who's going to be taking game number 2 home. GMU hopeful to extend this series. UMBC looking to put it as another 2-0 in the books.
Yeah, and so far, both of these teams looking like they just want to play it safe here. Just a traditional defensive layout, seeing if they can control any vision going to and from the jungle to relay that information to their opponent. Already got some blood being shed, technically, if you want to think about it. That laser coming in, the death ray from Promethean, just giving our boy Rennie a little bit of a love tap on that echo and seeing if he can look for more. Oh, we might get it.
Yeah.
There you go. Getting him secondary.
Slap a second one down, and I actually like this. They're pushing Echo back far enough that it made it really safe for Destin and Young Peanut to just walk in, throw down the ward early, just keep that vision. They know they want it pretty consistently. They'll ping it out. 9,000 Aces, he knows it's there, but ooh, yeah, look at that. Number 1, baby.
Heck
Number
yeah,
one.
number 1. Yeah. Oh well, it's it's a thing, but now more traditional.
It is that.
It's sort of like I want to see actually how Rennie is going to actually rotate, and so with Destin, because both of these jungles, again, the rotations are going to be very important. I don't think the Kha'Zix is one that does do the Korean jungle strat as much, just to get that early pressure. He wants to rush as much as possible, farm up, get those items, and then really hit level 6 where he can go in and he has that massive amount of burst damage to really start to shred people apart and make those ganks optimal. And if you look at where Destin can gank, it's mostly going to be in this mid and bottom lane because they have the tools to really set him up for success. He's really only going to look topside if him and Peanut are 100% guaranteed that they could possibly dive that turret and get out free of charge with a kill in their belt. So for them, you're going to be staying on that focus. You do see that he is going to be hanging around the bottom jungle a little bit more. Those Krugs are very optimal. And then Tomlin actually taking some harassment from that Rakan Xayah duo.
Yeah, they're happy to run that up into the face of their opponents. This is probably the one side of GMU that's going to be feeling very confident at the earlier portion of this game. They've got a duo that works very well together, and they know exactly how heavily they were able to just beat down the bottom lane of UMBC. Frog and Tomlin had a harder time with that one, all things considered, but now it's a matter of keeping up that pressure. Lafasa, he knows he wants it. Goes into the stun this time. The Ignites come down traded, but it's on the AD. Tomlin quite low. He's rooted up. That's first blood taken away. Rakan does get taken back, and it's some supports getting the ones down here in the bottom lane this time.
Okay, well, with both the supports getting the first blood, stays pretty even throughout, but the only real change is Isis Slippery is able to keep farming up and really getting that gold into him and continually funnel it. And so now it's the same. It's sort of the same story as last, where Tomlin is now on that back foot once again, is struggling to see if he can sort of keep tempo with Isis Slippery. But this time around, luckily, Lucian in game 1 wasn't really as strong in those mid to late game fights. Xayah is, so you're going to have some more security into those situations where you're not going to fully fall out of the game. And now she is cute, really struggling with that Gnar matchup. It's very difficult to handle, and so it's going to see if Kha'Zix and Destin can possibly look for maybe some pressure here in this mid.
Wanting them to find it there quickly as they possibly can. Now, 9,000 Asians, not a lot of mana here. They could be able to force a flash very early, and they do. Beautifully done. And just making sure the extra heap of damage on his head means he has to go back to base this early on. It's going to feel pretty good for the side of UMBC to be able to pressure that one out so early. 9,000 definitely didn't want to have to leave lane that early, especially being down in CS already, where Promethean can really just keep this one up. Forcing the teleport early, too, means that the other lane should be a little bit safer come Dragon discussion time.
Yeah, not only that, like, you also were getting forced out of the lane heavily already. He's destined for just some harassment, making sure that Chia knows he's there. And, oh no, another fight in the bottom lane.
Yeah, more to come of this one. Lafasa and Ice, they definitely want to keep this one up and pressured out as best they can. Tomlin, he's looking to keep this one back into his own hands, trying to get it as aggressive as possibly, while still being safe is the key there for himself as well. A big consideration. And now with Rennie lurking around in this bottom side near this dragon, things could be questionable.
Yeah, it is an Ocean Drake this time around, so it's going to be optimal for both of these teams to really just play it safe. It's not as dangerous, and both
Ooh.
all the lanes aren't really in a situation
Oh,
to cross it.
no.
But oh, Frog.
The flash just not connecting there. Leafas wanted it so bad and Jet was not able to get what he needed there. Frog able to do the damage or necessary to the damage control necessary to keep them out of that one and trouble. So that's a huge summoner blown there for the Rakan so early and a wasted gank for Rennie.
Yeah, not too bad. Luckily, Rakan is very flexible with his range on his disengage with working with Zaya. And looking at the vision control, it's so good in favor of our boys GMU because they have that entire bottom lane river lit up. They know if Destin's going to be anywhere close either of these lanes. They do have a little bit of vulnerability with just like those general lane ganks that Destin could try and provide. So they do have that bush here, the lane bush, warded up just to see that there's no bugs hanging out inside their lane. And so into the 6-minute convergence, going to a point where these teams are about to sort of hit that level 6 power spike, they got to plan exactly where they can find those picks to get themselves over the hill and get an actual sense of control in this game, right? Because Lafasa and Isis Slippery are pretty much the optimal choice here for GMU, where UMC and the big bulldogs are the big dogs are sort of a little bit more of a questionable sense, right? Like they don't have a direct or true lane to fully invest in, but all of them can just continue to control it up. Is Young Peanut looking to be in some trouble?
Yeah, here he comes right on this one. Rennie wants to get a call. The Forge God does connect, and that's all the damage, forcing the flash, but they follow immediately. Bad news now here for Young Peanut as Rennie picks up the kill for himself, whistling all the way back to spend some of that gold.
That was so close. If he was just alive for a little bit longer, I think Young Peanut could have turned that around with the Mega Gnar ultimate, but he didn't have enough in the Gnar bar yet, so luckily Rennie and Chia were able to do it. Well coordinated as well, though. It was a very close call for the aggression, and now into this bottom side, you have Destin hanging around. Now the vision's in his favor, and he might come down to turn this fight around.
Ooh, wants to give it the shot here, and there's going to be the leap on in. Dashing on out, though. This could be enough to get him back to tower, and just is. Lafasa, Isis, Slippery, being slippery themselves. Not in any position to get ganked on this one. Backing it off very nicely and still maintaining the CS lead. That's going to give the pings down. Rennie knows exactly where his opponents are and how to jungle around it. The good news for University of Maryland, Baltimore County is they are able to kind of reset the vision around that dragon. It was just a minute ago entirely red wards. Now it's entirely blue for the side of UMBC. So they're happy enough to get that one. But here comes the counter espionage efforts. This could be dangerous. Maybe a fight potentially brewing as the chase is happening on in. Suppression coming out. This could be huge as now Barmithian's in some real trouble. Destin keeping him off him, but now going to be pinched as the teleport does come out for Rennie. She is cute here as well, trying to get more out of this one. Young Peanut, can he get in onto it? It seems like they almost don't want to, but they're continuing to keep up this pressure. 9,000 Asians just barely rocked, and Destin gets it beautifully at the just edge of his flash to take a kill out. And the mid laner now gets some real dragon priority to University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Yeah, that was a good call there from GMU to try and take that fight, but it was just unfortunate slips here and there, and UMC, the big dogs, were actually quicker on the draw when it came down to executing their plan, but there's still tools in their kit.
Oh, we've seen the dragon fights go every way before, but this time it's all in the hands of UCMB. Again, yet they're trying to get the call of the Forge God down. Barmithian gets onto Lafasa. More to come out of this one as Chia is cute. Slays Destin. They're just bopping back and forth. It's only 2 left, but this one going so well at the end here for GMU. If they can just keep it up, if they can just slay Young Peanut, they're trying to get the Echo out in time. Rennie, he's going to be able to have enough time bought, but Young Peanut now may be able to turn it around onto Chia is cute. The Mega Gnar, this is enough. And it looks like just barely no! As at the end of the day, he falls. Thanks coming back in now to Rennie for bailing out. She is cute there.
Oh, so close there from the big dogs. But UMC, they're able to get the dragon with the Ocean Drake. But like we said, the tools were still available for GMU, and they were able to finally turn that fight into their favor. Took a little bit longer than expected, but luckily for them, it does keep them in a gold advantage, kill advantage, but pressure, it's still in favor of our boys, UMC. They have the wave control. They also have the vision going to be able to be reset. And even with the junglers, you have just those boots. The boots there, Sork shoes, are really only huge change up because Destin really hasn't gone back to buy them yet. And doesn't really care to either. He's sitting with only 400 gold on him, so that real change, that upgrade, is really the only difference that he has. And so far, it's just a reset of all the lanes to prepare for the next potential fight, which could be around Rift Herald. It is at that 10-minute mark, and both of these teams have a possibility to really try and sneak it away from one another.
This has so many parallels to the last game, right? Early Dragon.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of going over to the hands of the big dogs there. Bot lane not exactly performing as well as they might want it to early. This time, the only difference is Rennie. He's got so many kills compared to last time, but has to just timeline right back out of that one. 9,000 agents perhaps not as lucky as Destin takes that one for himself. It's a nice pickup return kill. And the jungler over on the side of UMBC feeling a little bit better about this one. 2-1-0. Effectively his worst score of the night thus far, as he does have a death. Unlike in game number 1.
That is true. He does have a death under his belt, but the 303... Oh, Tomlin almost going to get one more.
Yeah, this is really aggressive from Lafasa and Isis Slippery, just right into the ult of Frog, but they were able to spit out quite a bit of damage for themselves as well, while maintaining their own ultimates, so feeling pretty good about that one. The Ignite also did come out from Frog there, so enough to make it feel like it was worthwhile just to dash in and out for Lafasa and Ice. But meanwhile, over at the Rift Herald, this one just being soloed out and away sneakily by Kha'Zix. Destin picks that one up, and no real fights or anything else around it.
Yeah, like I said, both of these teams had the potential to sneak away that Rift Herald, so I'm surprised there wasn't really that much vision control in the favor of GMU, but when you have multiple control wards in that top side, 3 to be exact, I can sort of understand why that's the scenario. And of course, like, the strongest part of their team at this time is that bottom lane in Lafasa and Ice Slippery, so it's understandable. Keep them safe, keep them in a sense of confidence, but it gives up the entire rest of the map, and it's sort of the same story.
Yeah, this is a fight breaking out on both sides of the map, with the Rift Herald up on the top side means Rennie is going to get stunned up, shut down, just on the edge of the circle there. Barmithian picks that one up for himself, and now this is turning around as he's suppressed under the tower. Not focusing him, though, just yet. That's a nice bit of stall out from the rest of his team. The Rift Herald probably not going to take this whole tower, but does knock quite a bit out of the plate consideration. Meanwhile, on the bot lane, the fight's still continuing to rage on as Lafasa getting quite low. Has to burn his own flash for that ice. Had to use the summer to heal as well, but look at this. Turns it back around on Tomlin, and meanwhile, back up in the top lane. More damage is going down bot lane, top lane. Where do we look? It doesn't matter. Young Peanut having a flash out. She is cute just on the ropes, but Barmithian doesn't have the help to push it. None of them do. As now UMBC is just on the run out, and everybody, myself included, is just trying to catch their breath. Shake that one off and reset for this next fight.
That was ridiculous for like 30 seconds, and I need to take a fresh breath, like a breath of fresh air, because I hope no one got a seizure from that, because it's back and forth, there and back, almost like across the world and back for both.
Shout out to our poor cameraman, Kevin.
Yeah, seriously. Mad respect for the spectators, making sure that we get at least like a snippet of the action from both of those fights, because it sort of, again, it defines exactly what the two strengths of these teams are. You have Destin sort of being that shot caller and preparing UMC to really try and find those advantages. And then GMU is just, we have an extremely strong bottom lane, and our bottom lane can fight whenever they want. So it's sort of the same story as like game one, but it's a little bit more of a balanced out effort because the compositions are strong at almost the same exact points with how they're built. So it really comes down to those minor details of how well Destin is able to prepare and how GMU is able to sort of react and also sort of counteract these ridiculous split pushes as well.
We've got a 5v5 cooking as the call of the Forge God does come down. Young Peanut taking out She Is Cute, the first one to get in onto the scene there, but Rennie is down. Lefos, next one to go. Destin so strong, and look at this. They are just tearing through now as UMBC is on triple kill for Barmithian. He wants more as 9,000 Asians gonna get stunned up. The combo just waiting to reset on the cooldowns. The blue buff gonna help him, but no, look at the turnaround. Baited perfectly.
Oh my gosh.
As 9,000 Asians takes the kill away, but it's just a consolation prize as they do lose the fight overall. They do lose the dragon, and that's going to be a huge one. No, Destin! Perfectly timed to pull literally the ace out of the hole. Very last second. Well done to the jungler of UMBC.
Yeah, you pay the tax, but it's a faster recall, I guess, to go back and buy your Luden's Echo. So,
Whew.
oh my goodness, what a ridiculous fight. If you go back and sort of look at how those two sort of set up and prepared for that fight, you have all of this control for this vision on the side of UMC and the big dogs. They have the capability to always know exactly where this composition of Lafasa and Rennie are going to be, where they're going to try and move to make sure that Ice is slippery and over 9,000 Asians have that breathing space to really try and lay out the damage. So because they have that vision information, they're able to relay perfectly, know exactly where they shouldn't be, and get onto that backline as fast as possible with Destin, Peanut, and Promethean able to run it with. And then Frog sort of played more of a defensive scenario in that one. So Leona, luckily, even though it is a one-dimensional, she's either full defensive or full offense. And this time, again,
speaking of
she's
full
offense.
offensive, Mufasa is trying to get out of this one, but does actually manage just on the edge there. Doesn't even need the flash, able to just take it out for himself at the very edge there. Feeling fantastic about that one. And this has been kind of the story for that bot lane. Top lane now, Young Peanut not being able to catch a break either. Continuing in that story, Call the Forge God should slow him on up here. No jukes for yourself this time. The point blank does connect, and Rennie's going to take that kill for himself.
Yep, all right, nice job there. This is the helpfulness of Ornn being able to almost have 100% kill security if he has his ultimate up for those ganks, but now sitting at 12 kills to 12. Goal is almost pretty even. You still have 1,000 gold differential in favor of the big dogs, and it is mostly just on to sort of like an equal spread throughout the entire team. So even though you have this massive gold difference of 3,000 gold in between the mid laners, Promethean has been able to accrue 8,000 gold to only the 5,000 that over 9,000 has been able to do. But you also have an 1,000 gold advantage, almost 1,500 gold advantage for Isis Slippery on that Xayah. You have a gold advantage for the jungler actually, and for the support. So it is very minimal, but just because of the massive deficit that the mid laner is in, it shows this massive powerhouse that is Promethean on the Victor. So it explains why Victor was banned out, and also sort of explains why Echo was banned, or not Echo, excuse me, Kha'Zix was banned out for that game one. So when you do give those bans away in that second round, like I said with the Alawi, might have been able to give away free of charge. So it's giving just that breathing space and sort of that comfortability for UMC to really sort of go online.
Here's Rennie getting in onto Tomlin, but is it enough? They have to flash for it. Tomlin flashing out, but they're under the tower. Full stop. And the time winner just to get back on it. Chrono breaking this one now. Meanwhile, two come in. It's a nice double TP as Peanut and Promethean are trying to turn this one back on its head. We'll see if Chia, Ice, and the remaining Rennie can get out of this one in one piece. No! Young Peanut just whiffing that ultimate. So close, yet so far away at the end of the day. Means this one should break back even at a 1-1, but it's the AD that's gone down, and no, they want back in. GMU, the counter aggression, finally paying off as it slaps back a big kill in their favor. Mid lane tower, the only question mark here is that's been beat up by Destin pretty hard, but not enough to take it down.
Yeah, luckily there wasn't enough minions to be able to really tear down that mid lane turret, and it was healthy enough due to Malzahar being able to TP back and with the lane sustain and pushing that he has. But this last interaction that we had in that bottom lane just shows sort of the difference of over-aggression and just, it's not even disrespecting your opponent. It's just being confident in yourself to find more and being immediately punished to. And even though it sounds like I just said, yes, they're not respecting their opponents in just different words, it's not really the same, because both these teams are trying to do these plans and set up these plans when they are in a very strong and advantageous situation. They're doing the warding, they're preparing mentally with their team on exactly what they need to do, because they know that these things could happen and hiccup just a little bit in any given way. So they prepare properly, but then they just step a little bit too far, seeing if they can find a little bit more with the tools that they have. And there's always tools on the other side that are able to come back and sort of punish them back again. So that's really why this game is just so even between these two teams.
Definitely voting better for George Mason, and we saw some of this in the draft. Changing up the game plan's been doing well for him thus far, but now is the time they really have to focus on turning up some of that heat. They have some good advantages. The top side looking very good for them. Jungle staying incredibly relevant in the discussion at this point, which was certainly not the case last game. Now, potentially the Dragon. It's been a sore spot for them all series long, and They've
Yeah.
not picked up a single dragon for themselves. They want to change that, break the record with this one in particular, and it doesn't look like it's going to be contested, actually. So this could be the start of a new chapter. The mid lane tower, the focus now, coming out for UMBC, and they're going to get it.
Yeah, but this was a great call from UMBC because they knew that they could just take the 2 turrets in the mid lane for the price of just one single Ocean Drake. So they're going to go for it.
Forge God
fighting
coming down. They want to get more off of this one. It's a nice gnarl, but Peanut's health bar is suffering for it. Barmithian, though, slays out. She is cute. That's going to be Destin dying uncharacteristically early, as now Tomlin on the run for his life. Barmithian doing everything he can to hold this one back, and just barely does by taking out over 9,000 Asians. Rennie as low as well, having to back out of this one. So 4 remaining for the side of UMBC. Only 3 now over on the hands of GMU. It was an aggressive engage, and it probably saved their tower, but you got to wonder at what cost at this point.
Yeah, and this also provides some pressure to go ahead and get some more vision control into the jungle of GMU. UMBC can possibly look out for more, but they decide to just stay in the mid lane, which they have the demolish, sure, but you still have 3 members that are really willing to fight.
Mufasa, he's been feeling really good about his in and outs all game because they've been going so well for him in the bottom lane. You're not in the bottom lane anymore, and as long as Barmithian is alive, you can be punished for doing that. It's a tough lesson. He did just learn, but at least it didn't cost him his life.
Yeah, luckily not. We haven't gotten to the point where Victor can literally just actually death ray you. Just straight death ray. But in this scenario, you have the Baron available. You don't have that dragon, so now that vision's going to start to migrate up to that top side. And these teams have the killing potential to sort of take it out. Though I would say that, you know, UMBC actually has better Baron taking possibility with the Kaisa, with her Void procs, and even with the Gnar as well, excuse me, to have that just that natural health percent shred. And then on the other side, on the flip side, they don't have as much security, though. Yes, they have the gravity field from Victor. Yes, they do have the defensive peel that they can throw out from Leona. But these are things that are very, very single targeted. And the gravity field has an extremely long cooldown. So going into a scenario where you have an actual Ornn, a Rakan, and a Malzahar to really create a lot of space. And of course, the zoning that Echo can provide as well with his time zone conversions is something that is just a little bit more defensible if you are trying to take away that Baron.
Speaking of time zone conversions, don't forget daylight savings this weekend. But meanwhile, Barmithian, he's popped up. He's shut down immediately. Bopped out of that one and will not get a chance to set anything back except the gray screen straight back to base. Huge pickup for this one. And now this could be dangerous as the Baron is now the new target of UMBC. I'm sorry, of GMU. They want it over UMBC. It'd be a huge pickup as it's the walk back for young Peanut. He's a long way off, but is the damage there to get it in time is the question.
It's the ultimate smite fight too, because Rennie has never been able to smite anything away from Destin. Destin has always had that upper hand, and they have a slower Baron, but a safer Baron, so they have to be careful on exactly where this Kha'Zix is, because he could come in and take it down at any moment.
Rennie just nervous flash back into the pit. They want to get the fight. They think they don't need Barmithian as the 9,000 Asians. He's taken down. That's the reset on the jump. It's a double kill as Rennie's taken out. Beautiful Gnar redemption coming through, and this one's going over to Tomlin. The Baron is going over to UMBC. They have absolutely decimated GMU on this fight.
That was a perfect Leona ult. The 3-man stun, grabbing those crucial members to allow Destin to just sit on that backline for a long enough time to where Baron did just enough damage. Same with young Peanut and Tomlin. They had just enough of damage application during that stun duration to go in and get that lethality tempo for Destin to get those resets, jump in, take out over 9,000, take out Rennie, take out Ice, and eventually take out Lafasa as well. And now with the Baron in their hands, they can go ahead and push into this mid lane, take out the inhibitor. They're going to have to be careful because there is a possibility to fight back.
Absolutely. Barmithian as well, not with his team, but the cherry on top of all that Baron call is that he was able to get the Baron himself as well. So he's empowering these minions despite being a little late to the party. The call the Forge God wanted to get him, but it's just going to fly right on by. He'll have plenty of time to reset with the rest of his team. They will regroup. They'll possibly be looked to, I would assume, you know, set up a delayed siege in this bottom lane, maybe with Peanut with the teleporter, Barmithian, and then really look to take it to the base of George Mason.
Oh, yeah. And they can go ahead and within the next minute or so, they will be able to take that dragon. And give a little bit more siege capability for their team, have that sustainability where they can take that harassment and that poke coming out from Ice's Slippery. But a lot of that short range sort of lane control on the side of GMU won't really be able to reach many of the members from UMBC. So being able to have that sustainability and with these Baron minions as well, really take a nice and steady path to this bottom lane inhibitor. But I don't think they're actually going to be able to take the inhibitor turret unless they find a really good ultimate onto either Ice's Slippery or over 9,000, because they need to take out those two members to before they're able to sort of like have a green light to go and dive these turrets.
The pacing, this feels a little weird too. Meganar was just popped in the top lane, so get the feeling that Young Peanut's just going to let that one taper out, not really going to be looking to teleport down immediately should a fight break out. I don't know that GMU's keeping track of exactly what kind of fight potential they have at this point. They know they don't just want to run headlong into a Baron team, right? That's the big question mark. But they can't just stand by and let this tower fall either, as the cannon minion does mean the siege is going to be able to go on for a little while, take it down to at least half HP, if not just a splash more. At the end of the day, it's a really great setup for UMBC. They're just continuing to play right on that edge of a stressful zone for George Mason, and it gets them the top tower.
And like I said, there's not enough long-range poke to sort of like take care of those minions. Like you saw, that canyon minion stayed up for a really long time before they were really able to try and take it down. And Young Peanut was able to get the turret in the top lane to do so. So you've got something going on where you have an inhibitor that's leaking, you have a bot lane that's about to pop, and Promethean's able to get out free of charge.
Oh, the Forge God does come down. They want to turn it back, though. Over 9,000 does slay Barmithian. The Tide is just going right back to the basics, though, as Tomlin's getting in with a double kill for himself, and that's a huge pickup as Peanut, finding the time to get on the back line, might just have to get right back out, waiting on the minions, waiting on the Baron. Thus far, it's a 2-for-2, but the inhibitors are the real prize here as it's taken out. This will be the third and final inhibitor now, going into the hands of UMBC.
Yeah, and so this will proc these super minions for at least 2.5 minutes. And with these, just these waves just crawling in and flooding the base of GMU, you're at this stage where is there really any way to come back? And it is that ultimate coordinated fight where Chia is able to get a massive Call of the Forge God. You have to have that sort of followed up or complemented with LaFoss's quickening engagements to where Tomlin and Promethean are never able to participate for a second. Because if they are, you do have their flashes down, and you did just exhaust Prometheans like not even a minute ago. So there is the possibility and there is the room to do it, but UMBC has been playing so well and is now knowing that they have the control. They're going to drive it slowly, and they can drive it home because they have every single factor running for them.
And even if you get that perfect fight, right, if you're George Mason at this point, the thoughts lingering in the back of your brain have to be there. Okay, look, you only have your Nexus towers left. You've not taken a single tower from UMBC yet. And even if you do pull off the miracle upset, you've still got a game number 3 to come through. So I imagine there's quite a bit of mental deficit coming out here as they are staring what feels like almost certain defeat in the face. This is a good team to go down 0-2 to UMBC here, and they had so many of the elements together here for them going so well. The fights, the lane control, the laning phase, so good for them with a lot of it, but the objectives just were outpaced by UMBC here. I think a lot of credit does go to Destin for that one in particular, but Barmithian having kind of a show match game for himself this time as well, as he's going to get engaged on, but just not enough. It's a last-minute desperation as Tomlin's able to turn it back on its head perfectly. Rennie does finish what was started, but they're getting finished themselves as GMU is just getting absolutely slaughtered here. Ice is Slippery doing his best to kite this one and actually managing to do so quite well. Young Peanut and Destin, the only two left alive, and Destin going to be going down very quickly for himself there. So what looked like a last-minute desperation to really just give it one last hurrah was actually a fantastic shutdown and stall coming out from George Mason.
That was perfect. That is exactly what I wanted from them. Barmithian and Tomlin did not get to participate in that fight whatsoever. They were the first men down, and they are going to be the crucial points that there was really no actual true definition for a fight back for UMBC. So the fact that you have also Ice and Slippery still up and running, you have over 9,000 Asians who was able to keep alive as well. It just shows that if you're able to do that properly, you're really going to be standing a fighting chance to take down this take down this team and take it to a possible game 3, but it is a massive if, because not only do you have to do that again, you have to possibly take the Baron away from them because of that second Baron buff that's going to be coming in here. They're definitely already planning for it. So taking the Baron away, which is already a Hail Mary within itself, getting that perfect fight not only a second time but possibly a third is already a massive chance of playing against the Fates. So you have a Fnatic push being set up by UMBC that could foil every single bit of this possible comeback, even though I'm being very hopeful for it.
They definitely want to try to pull it out here. I think obviously they know the super minion threat is such a definitive thorn in their side at this point that it's just going to allow this Baron to be started up or scouted out. Yeah, it's already at half HP over on the side of UMBC at this point. They're feeling really good about the pressure out that they have for it, going way low, not contested at all. So this should just be a quick, clean reset. They don't even need to go back to base, although who knows, they might want to depending on gold totals, but really the top there is Kha'Zix sitting on about 1,700. I don't think that's going to be enough to warrant a trip back to base. It did actually. No, sorry, I was not. I didn't see him. He'll get that. He'll get the Mountain Drake, and then they're going to reset here, and this should just really spell bad news for GMU.
Yeah, and they're just picking the map clean. They're taking all the resources that they can. They're going to take the Mountain Drake as well, and they could take that final recall, but you know, you're sitting at gold right now in your pocket. The max is with Young Peanut having 1,200. You don't have enough to complete really any items. You just have it to where you're just denying any possibility for gold to really get back into the pockets of GMU. So they're going to be sort of escorting these minions up. They do have the inhibitors coming back up for them, so these super minion waves are now gone, and it gives them just a little bit more of a defendable position to where they have about a minute gap until those super minions really start to swing back if these inhibitors are taken down.
This is just baby buying time here as Young Peanut's trying to get this bottom lane inhibitor for himself sneakily. It's up to the rest of his team to buy time on that one. They're looking to make it happen in the mid lane, but look at that. The Call of the Forge God does come down. It is whiffed. Barmithian, a very aggressive early pop on that Zhonya's means he's taken right out of this one, and they find him early yet again. Can they get the damage back? 9,000 Asians does go down, so both mid laners are out of contention at this point, but Rennie is taken down on the back line. Tomlin very low, has to be careful. Frog almost certainly going to die, but not if Destin has anything to say about it, keeping the Leona alive. Ice is slippery, taken on out and away, and that's going to seal the deal, baby. UMBC. The GGs come down. They're marching on through a 2-0. It was hard fought by GMU, but at the end of the day, there was just nothing they could do against this dominating force that was the University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Man. It was just a fraction of a fight, just about 2 seconds that Barmithian was able to give them. It was the Zhonyas that denied that crucial Gnar ultimate and allowed just enough breathing space for Kha'Zix and Leona to get onto that back line and really cause that havoc to where there was just enough space for Tomlin to just fight out that Echo on his own and win that fight. So even though Barmithian wasn't in that final edition, that final bout, it was him that sort of was the definition or sort of the deciding factor to really set the nail home and give them that 2-0 sweep against GMU. So well done on both these teams' parts. It shows that these teams, they have the capability to really take these fights and really take not only map control for just a slight moment of time against these really bloody games, but they also are able to draft really well for these matchups. GMU had a little bit of a hiccup that first game, but they came back really strong with their second composition, and it's something that for me, UMBC, the big dogs, they are definitely the big dogs in this series and in the season. So I'm going to be interested to see if there are any bigger sort of hounds in their matchups in the coming weeks that they might have trouble taking down.
Well, you always know that there is, of course, always a bigger fish lurking in the depths there to come out. But yeah, UMBC just looking fantastic. A lot of credit to Tomlin here, who had slow, difficult starts in both of his games and was able to just do the role of a marksman perfectly, positioning very well, making sure he was able to get to that positive score by the end of it, 7-5 and 14, meaning 21 of their total 28 kills he was participating in. I think the only excluded ones were kind of those earlier game skirmishes kind of up on other parts of the map. So shout out to him as he's been pulling it back together. Of course, want to thank both of these teams for taking the time to change up the schedule. Most CSL games played on Saturday. These guys agreed to move it back to a wonderful Tuesday evening, late enough on the East Coast here as we're knocking on the door of just about 11 p.m. So definitely appreciate the time being taken by these college students. We know, of course, they are busy. Some other thank yous, of course, going out to GameStop. Power to the players. These guys are helping us out this year, promoting their esports, their weeklies coming out. You can find out every cool thing they're doing. GameStop.com/esports. I believe some of that's in-house. I believe a lot of it can be done just online. So definitely pop over and check that one out. But I believe for Coco and myself, that's going to get close to doing it here for the evening. Any more closing thoughts?
No, come back for next week. We're hopefully going to have just as an exciting game, and possibly we're going to, I wonder when we're going to get the first game 3 for us in this year, because if we get it on the 3rd week, that'll be crucial. Just perfect, set it up like that. Every 3rd week you do a 3 best of 3. That'd be fun to see.
We're crossing our fingers for it, holding out hope. You can find us here, of course, next Tuesday, running all the way through just about Thanksgiving. Every Tuesday, weekly, same time, same place. So we'll see you then. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to say good night. Thanks for watching.